that can in your pantry right now. It might contain a euthanasia drug, the same chemical vets use to put animals to sleep, found in cans labeled premium beef, or a vitamin dose, so wrong your cat's kidneys fail before you notice anything's wrong. These aren't sketchy discount brands. These are names you trust. Names your vet recommended. Names in millions of homes, while owners have no idea what's inside. In the next 15 minutes, I'm exposing exactly which 10 wet cat food brands are putting your cat at risk and what you should actually be feeding instead. 10 Lives Wet Cat Food, because it is inexpensive, familiar, and positioned as a dependable staple. It has been on shelves for decades, which creates the assumption that longevity equals safety or adequacy. For many households, it becomes the default option when cost matters more than scrutiny, and the packaging reinforces that comfort with simple claims and cheerful imagery that suggest completeness and balance. Once you examine the label closely, the problems become obvious. The primary ingredients are vague meat byproducts rather than clearly identified muscle meats. This matters because byproducts can legally include low-value leftovers that vary widely in nutritional quality. The formulas are also padded with artificial colors and flavor enhancers that exist purely to make the food look and smell appealing to humans and cats, not to provide nourishment. Thickening agents create volume and texture, but they dilute protein density, meaning your cat consumes more filler than nutrition per serving. In real-world feeding, the shortcomings show up quickly. The food often separates into watery gravy and congealed solids. Many cats lick the liquid portion and abandon the rest, which leaves owners either wasting food or overfeeding to compensate. Energy levels fluctuate, coats lose sheen over time, and hunger returns sooner than it should after a meal. None of this is accidental. It is the result of a formula designed to meet minimum legal standards at the lowest possible cost. Price is the final illusion. While the can appears cheap, the cost per usable calorie is not. You end up buying more units, feeding more frequently, and still delivering subpar nutrition. What you are really purchasing is moisture, binders, and branding history, not a product built to support long-term feline health or efficiency in daily feeding. 9 Friskies classic pâté and gravy lines are purchased because they are everywhere and aggressively positioned as fun, indulgent, and satisfying. The brand relies on bright colors, playful names, and the promise that cats love the taste, which subtly shifts the buyer's focus away from nutrition and toward immediate acceptance. Many consumers assume that if a cat eagerly eats something, it must be good for them, and Friskies capitalizes on that assumption. A closer look at the ingredient list tells a different story. These formulas are heavily built around carbohydrates and binding agents that have no biological purpose for cats. Corn, wheat, and various starches are used to bulk up the product and create a smooth, uniform texture. Artificial dyes are added solely for appearance, despite cats having no need for colorful food. Protein sources are often vague or secondary, meaning the actual meat content is far lower than the packaging implies. In everyday feeding, this formulation creates predictable outcomes. Cats often eat quickly and enthusiastically at first, drawn in by strong aromas and gravy coatings. Shortly afterward, hunger returns because the meal lacks sufficient animal protein and fat to sustain satiety. This leads to frequent begging, overeating, and inconsistent energy levels. Over time, many owners notice weight gain without improved muscle tone, along with duller coats and less stable digestion. The price point reinforces the illusion of value. Friskies appears economical on the shelf, but because the food is nutritionally diluted, cats require larger portions or more frequent feedings to feel satisfied. The cost per effective nutrient rises quietly, while waste increases due to uneaten remnants and overfeeding. What looks like a budget-friendly choice is actually a cycle of low-quality calories and compromised nutrition, sold under the guise of abundance and enjoyment rather than functional, species-appropriate feeding. 8 Meow Mix Wet Food is purchased primarily because the brand name itself signals variety and familiarity. Many consumers associate Meow Mix with broad flavor appeal and assume that a company known for getting cats to eat must understand feline nutrition. The wet food line extends that reputation, promising balanced meals with recognizable flavors at a price that feels reasonable for daily feeding. The underlying issue is that the formulation prioritizes aroma and texture over nutritional density. Water often appears near the top of the ingredient list, followed by meat byproducts rather than clearly named animal proteins. Plant-based thickeners and starches are used to create body and consistency, which gives the impression of substance while quietly displacing protein. Flavor enhancers compensate for the lack of high-quality meat, encouraging cats to eat food that offers limited biological value. In real-world use, this imbalance becomes evident. Cats may initially consume the food eagerly, driven by smell rather than substance. Over time, interest wanes, leading to partially eaten servings or selective licking of the gravy. Owners often respond by rotating flavors more frequently or adding toppers, which increases cost and complexity without fixing the core problem. Digestive inconsistencies are common, including softer stools and variable appetite, because the food relies on ingredients that are easier to process industrially than biologically appropriate for cats. From a value perspective, Meow Mix wet food sits in an uncomfortable middle ground. It is not the cheapest option, yet it does not deliver the protein quality or ingredient transparency of higher-performing brands. The price per can suggest adequacy, but the nutritional return does not justify it. What consumers end up paying for is water, fillers, and a familiar logo, rather than a dependable source of concentrated animal-based nutrition that supports long-term health and efficient feeding. 7 Fancy Feast Gravy Lovers is bought because it looks indulgent and feels premium. The packaging is polished, the portions are small and tidy, and the brand carries a reputation for being a step above bargain food. Many consumers interpret that presentation as evidence of quality, assuming that a product positioned as refined must also be nutritionally thoughtful. The heavy emphasis on gravy reinforces the idea that this is a treat cats crave, and for many owners, enthusiastic eating is mistaken for nutritional success. The problem begins with what the product actually is. In Gravy Lovers formulas, the gravy is not a side element, it is the core of the product. To achieve that thick, glossy texture, the recipes rely heavily on starches, gums, and modified plant-based binders. These ingredients inflate volume and create mouthfeel, but they contribute little to a cat's biological needs. Actual muscle meat is often secondary, fragmented, or present in modest amounts compared to the liquid and binding agents surrounding it. Protein percentages look acceptable on paper only because moisture levels are high and portion sizes are small. In real feeding situations, this imbalance shows up quickly. Cats tend to consume the gravy first, sometimes exclusively, leaving behind the solid pieces. What they are ingesting is mostly flavored liquid with suspended carbohydrates rather than dense animal nutrition. Satiety is short-lived, which leads to repeated begging, grazing behavior, or agitation between meals. Owners often respond by feeding more units per day, assuming the portions are simply too small, when the real issue is that the food is nutritionally light. Over time, this pattern can quietly undermine health. Cats may maintain or gain weight while losing muscle tone, a classic sign of inadequate protein quality. Energy levels fluctuate, coats become less glossy, and litter box output can become inconsistent due to the high use of thickeners and starches. None of this is dramatic or immediate, which is precisely why the product avoids scrutiny. It does not cause obvious failure, it causes slow inefficiency. Price is where Fancy Feast Gravy Lovers becomes especially misleading. On a per-unit basis, the cost seems reasonable, even affordable. When evaluated per ounce of usable protein, it is not. The consumer pays for water, texture, and branding far more than for nutrition. Because cats require more servings to feel satisfied, the apparent value erodes quickly. What looks like controlled portioning becomes a recurring expense driven by hunger rather than health. Marketing plays a central role in sustaining this cycle. Words like gourmet and gravy shift attention toward indulgence instead of function. The food is framed as an experience rather than fuel, which lowers expectations around performance. As long as the cat eats eagerly in the moment, the product is perceived as successful. That framing benefits the manufacturer, not the animal. Fancy feast gravy lovers is not dangerous in the immediate sense, and that is exactly why it persists. It meets legal requirements, avoids extreme red flags, and delivers short-term palatability. What it does not deliver is efficient, species-appropriate nourishment. It conditions both cats and owners to accept constant hunger as normal and frequent feeding as inevitable. The result is a product that feels premium, performs minimally, and quietly costs more than it should in both money and nutritional opportunity. 6. Purina Pro Plan Wet Cat Food is purchased because it carries institutional credibility. The brand leans heavily on associations with veterinary clinics, scientific language, and controlled feeding claims, which gives consumers the impression that the formulas are rigorously optimized. For many buyers, Pro Plan represents the responsible choice, the option that feels researched, measured, and endorsed by professionals rather than marketing trends. That perception is precisely why this product deserves closer scrutiny. While Pro Plan is not a bargain basement food, its formulations reveal compromises that do not align with its premium positioning. Ingredient lists frequently rely on animal byproducts and meat derivatives rather than consistently named muscle meats. While these ingredients are legal and sometimes nutritious, their quality and sourcing are variable, which introduces inconsistency across batches. To maintain palatability, the formulas often include animal digest and flavor enhancers, ingredients designed to make food irresistible rather than inherently nourishing. One of the more subtle issues is ingredient splitting. Carbohydrate sources, such as rice, cornstarch, or wheat gluten may appear lower on the list individually, but collectively they contribute a meaningful portion of the food's structure and calories. This allows the product to appear protein-forward while still relying on plant-based components that cats do not require. The result is a formulation that performs adequately on paper, but is less efficient biologically than its branding suggests. In real-world feeding, Pro Plan wet food tends to produce mixed results. Many cats eat it reliably, which reinforces owner confidence, but long-term outcomes often plateau. Appetite remains steady but not satisfied, leading to routine top-offs or mixed feeding with dry food. Coat quality and muscle condition typically remain acceptable rather than optimal. Digestive tolerance varies by individual, with some cats doing well and others experiencing intermittent stool inconsistency, particularly on gravy-style formulas that use more gums and thickeners. Pricing is where the disconnect becomes more apparent. Pro Plan is positioned above mass-market brands, yet it does not consistently deliver ingredient transparency or protein density that justifies that tier. When compared ounce for ounce with cleaner label competitors, the cost per usable nutrient is higher than expected. Consumers are paying for brand authority, research signaling, and distribution scale rather than a distinctly superior formulation. Another concern is how the product frames itself as specialized. Lines targeting sensitive systems, urinary health, or weight management often rely on reduction or substitution rather than improvement. Protein may be lowered, fiber increased, or minerals adjusted, but the base ingredients remain largely the same. This creates the impression of precision without meaningful elevation in ingredient quality. For owners managing specific health needs, this can feel reassuring while delivering only marginal functional benefit. Purina Pro Plan wet food occupies an uncomfortable middle space. It is clearly more controlled than entry-level brands and less overtly flawed, which makes it easy to trust. At the same time, it does not fully commit to the standards implied by its pricing and reputation. The food succeeds by being acceptable across a wide population rather than exceptional for the species it serves. What ultimately defines Pro Plan wet food is caution, not excellence. It avoids extremes, meets regulatory and veterinary expectations, and delivers predictable short-term results. What it does not do is maximize biological efficiency or ingredient integrity. For consumers paying a premium in hopes of clear nutritional advantage, that gap between promise and performance is the central issue. Five Hills Science Diet Wet Cat Food is purchased largely because of the brand's long-standing clinical reputation. The packaging emphasizes veterinary approval, scientific formulation, and health-focused claims, which persuades many consumers that they are providing the best possible nutrition. For households seeking a safe choice, Science Diet represents reliability and authority, giving the impression that it has been carefully optimized for feline health. That perception drives trust, often outweighing careful inspection of the ingredient list or scrutiny of actual nutritional performance. When evaluating the formulas more closely, several issues become apparent. Despite marketing that emphasizes science and targeted nutrition, many of the recipes still contain plant-based fillers, such as corn, wheat, and soy. These ingredients are included to add bulk, stabilize texture, and reduce cost, but they do not align with the biological needs of obligate carnivores. Animal protein is present, but often in forms that are partially processed or include byproducts rather than clearly identifiable muscle meat. Flavor enhancers and gums are also added to ensure palatability, compensating for the relatively modest meat content and making the food more appealing without necessarily improving nutrition. In everyday feeding scenarios, the limitations of Hill's Science Diet wet food become evident. Cats typically consume the meals readily, reinforcing owner confidence. Yet satiety is often short-lived. The heavy use of carbohydrates and water results in a product that fills the stomach without providing sustained energy from high-quality protein and fat. Over time, this can manifest in fluctuating energy levels, less optimal muscle development, and sometimes softer stools, particularly for cats with sensitive digestion. While the food meets minimum nutritional requirements, it is not optimized for peak performance, and owners may inadvertently compensate by offering more frequent meals, which increases overall cost and caloric intake. Price is another factor where expectations do not always align with reality. Hill's Science Diet sits in the premium category, often priced significantly above mainstream wet foods. This pricing conveys quality, but the nutritional density and ingredient transparency do not consistently justify the cost. Consumers are effectively paying for brand trust and clinical positioning more than a markedly superior formula. In comparison to other higher-end or natural wet foods that focus on named, whole proteins and minimal fillers, the return on investment in terms of nutrient quality is moderate at best. Marketing plays a central role in sustaining Science Diet's appeal. Claims highlighting specific life stage or health-oriented formulas, such as digestive care or urinary support, give the impression of precision and specialization. In reality, the adjustments often involve modest tweaks, slightly altered fiber content, mineral adjustments, or protein percentage changes, while the core ingredients remain largely unchanged. This creates an aura of advanced formulation without materially elevating the baseline quality of the food. Science Diet wet food occupies a position that is safe, familiar, and predictable. It avoids the overt pitfalls of bargain brands, delivers consistent palatability, and maintains regulatory compliance. Cats typically tolerate it well, and most owners feel confident they are meeting nutritional needs. However, it is not the highest performing option in terms of protein density, ingredient transparency, or long-term functional benefits. It represents a conservative, risk-averse approach to feeding rather than a proactive strategy for optimal feline health. Ultimately, the formula's limitations underscore a common consumer misconception that veterinary association and premium pricing automatically equate to superior nutrition. Science Diet is competent and reliable, but its reliance on plant-based fillers, processed byproducts, and flavor additives means that performance does not fully match perception. For owners who prioritize efficiency, ingredient clarity, and long-term vitality, understanding these nuances is essential in making informed purchasing decisions. For EOM's Perfect Portions, wet food is purchased primarily for convenience and portion control. The concept of pre-measured servings appeals strongly to busy cat owners who want to avoid overfeeding or messy measuring, and the packaging reinforces this perception. It markets itself as practical, clean, and efficient, which encourages trust in the product's value and nutritional adequacy. Consumers are drawn to the idea that feeding cats can be simplified without compromising their health, making Perfect Portions an attractive option on the shelf. However, the formulation itself reveals significant compromises. The first ingredients are often meat byproducts and unnamed animal derivatives rather than clearly specified muscle meats, which reduces the quality and consistency of protein. Water is a prominent component, followed by plant-based thickeners and fillers like rice starch or corn gluten meal. These ingredients create bulk and texture, but do not contribute meaningful nutrition. Flavor enhancers are also used to ensure that cats consume the entire portion, masking the fact that the meat content is modest and the overall formula is diluted. In real-world feeding, the limitations of EOM's perfect portions become clear. Cats typically consume the food quickly, giving the appearance of satisfaction. However, because the meals are light in actual protein density, satiety is often short-lived. Many owners find themselves feeding additional portions or supplementing with dry food to keep their cats from begging, which erodes the time-saving advantage that pre-portioned servings were meant to provide. Some cats also leave remnants of the filler-heavy solids while consuming the more flavorful or aromatic components, leading to waste and uneven nutrition intake. Digestive outcomes are generally stable but unremarkable, and long-term health benefits remain moderate. Price is another area where perception and reality diverge. While Perfect Portions is marketed as convenient and premium, the cost per actual nutrient is higher than it appears. Consumers pay not only for packaging and portioning technology, but also for branding and marketing rather than superior protein content. The pre-measured packs create the illusion of efficiency, but in practice, multiple servings may be required to meet a cat's energy and protein needs, increasing the effective cost. Marketing contributes heavily to the brand's appeal. Clean, modern packaging, combined with messaging about convenience and waste reduction, convinces owners that they are making a responsible choice. This framing obscures the fact that the product is nutritionally diluted and requires frequent feeding to achieve true satiety. The focus on ease of use often overshadows careful inspection of ingredient quality or protein density, which are more critical indicators of value for long-term feline health. EOM's Perfect Portions is ultimately a product built for practicality rather than optimal nutrition. It succeeds in providing tidy, pre-measured servings and is generally well tolerated by cats, which reinforces consumer trust. However, the reliance on fillers, byproducts, and water-heavy formulations means that the food is light in actual protein and caloric content. Satiety is limited, and owners often find themselves compensating by offering additional servings or mixing in supplemental foods. The product occupies a middle ground, convenient and safe but not exceptional. It avoids the pitfalls of cheap mass-market wet foods while failing to deliver the nutrient density of higher quality, whole protein options. The convenience factor is real, but it comes at the cost of feeding efficiency and overall nutritional value. Understanding this distinction is crucial for owners who prioritize both practicality and long-term feline health. While Perfect Portions appears premium and time-saving, the reality is that cats often need more than the designated serving to achieve proper nourishment, and owners end up paying more for less protein than the packaging suggests. 3 Blue Buffalo Wilderness Wet Food is purchased because it presents itself as a high-protein, natural alternative to mainstream wet cat foods. The branding emphasizes wild-inspired recipes, grain-free formulations, and premium ingredients, which appeals to consumers seeking nutrition that more closely aligns with a cat's evolutionary diet. Many owners are drawn to the concept of natural, minimally processed food with identifiable proteins, assuming that the marketing reflects actual ingredient quality and consistency. The packaging reinforces this perception with clean visuals, bold claims, and references to real meat, creating an impression of superiority over conventional brands. Closer inspection of the formulas reveals a more complicated reality. While Blue Buffalo Wilderness Wet Food does contain named animal proteins, the amount and quality can vary significantly between flavors and batches. Some recipes rely heavily on peas, pea protein, or other plant-based ingredients to boost the apparent protein content on paper, which inflates the guaranteed analysis without providing the same biological value as meat. Water, thickeners, and natural flavors are used liberally to create a palatable texture and aroma, masking the variability in protein sources and making it difficult for the average consumer to evaluate the true nutrient density. In practical feeding scenarios, this inconsistency can lead to noticeable issues. Cats may initially eat the food enthusiastically due to the strong aroma and appealing texture, but over time, some individuals may find certain flavors less palatable or leave portions behind. This is particularly evident in formulas with higher plant-based content, which can alter flavor and mouthfeel. Satiety may be compromised as well, because while the label lists high protein percentages, the digestible animal protein may be lower than expected, leading to repeated begging or the need for supplemental feedings. Digestive tolerance varies, with some cats experiencing mild softness in stools when consuming formulas with more legumes or fillers. Price is another factor that complicates the perception of value. Wilderness wet food is positioned as a premium product, often costing significantly more than mass-market alternatives. Consumers assume they are paying for superior protein quality and better nutrient density. In reality, the cost per ounce of usable animal protein can be comparable to, or even exceed, other high-quality options that provide more consistent protein content and fewer plant-based fillers. What buyers are often paying for is the branding, the grain-free positioning, and the perceived natural quality, rather than guaranteed superior nutrition. Marketing plays a central role in sustaining consumer trust in Blue Buffalo Wilderness. The company emphasizes transparency, natural ingredients, and a high-protein philosophy, which resonates with the growing demand for healthier pet food. However, the marketing sometimes obscures critical realities about ingredient sourcing, batch variability, and reliance on plant-based protein boosts to meet nutritional targets. The product can give the impression of consistency and premium quality, but real-world performance reveals gaps between perception and execution. Blue Buffalo Wilderness wet food is a mixed bag. It is better than many mass-market options and does deliver some named animal protein, but it is not always the reliable high-performance food that marketing suggests. Cats may enjoy it, and it is generally safe and well-tolerated, yet satiety, consistency, and true nutrient density can fall short of expectations. Owners seeking premium feeding must carefully read labels and consider the proportion of named meat versus plant-based ingredients to assess whether the product truly meets their standards. Ultimately, Wilderness wet food occupies a nuanced middle ground. It offers some benefits over bargain brands and demonstrates a commitment to avoiding artificial colors and flavors. But the inconsistency in protein sources and reliance on legumes and fillers undermines the premium image. Consumers are paying for brand positioning, perceived naturalness, and marketing, while actual nutritional efficiency may not match the claims. For those prioritizing high-quality, predictable animal protein, closer scrutiny is essential to ensure that the product performs as expected in everyday feeding. Cats may enjoy the taste, but satisfaction and long-term nutritional adequacy require careful selection and informed evaluation of the formula. Toshiba Perfect Portions is purchased primarily for its sleek, convenient packaging and portion-controlled servings. The product is marketed as a premium choice, offering pre-measured, single-serve pouches designed to reduce waste, simplify feeding, and deliver a gourmet experience to cats. Many consumers are drawn to the brand because it promises elegance, ease, and a sense of indulgence, creating a perception that their cats are receiving a superior diet without requiring careful meal planning or measurement. The pre-portioned servings and high-end branding make it feel modern, convenient, and responsible. Despite its appeal, a deeper look at the formulation reveals significant limitations. While the packaging emphasizes meat content, the actual protein density is modest. The first ingredients often include unnamed meat byproducts and derivatives, rather than clearly specified muscle meat. Water constitutes a substantial portion of each pouch, followed by thickeners, gums, and starches to achieve the desired texture. These additives create volume and a pleasing consistency, but do little to provide essential nutrients. Flavor enhancers are included to ensure cats readily consume the food, masking the relatively low quality and quantity of the primary protein. In real-world feeding, these formulation choices have practical consequences. Cats may initially consume the pouches eagerly, drawn by aroma and texture. But satiety is often short-lived. Because the protein content is diluted and the food is water-heavy, cats frequently require multiple pouches per meal to feel satisfied, which quickly diminishes the convenience factor that is central to the product appeal. Owners may find themselves feeding extra portions or supplementing with dry food to compensate, inadvertently increasing cost and calorie intake. Some cats may selectively consume the more aromatic components and leave behind solids, resulting in food waste and uneven nutrient intake. Price is another point of concern. Shiba Perfect Portions is positioned firmly in the premium segment, often costing significantly more per ounce than mainstream or mid-tier wet foods. Consumers are willing to pay for the pre-measured packaging, perceived quality, and the convenience of individual servings, but the actual nutrient density per pouch is modest. The effective cost per usable protein is high because multiple servings are often necessary to meet a cat's energy and protein requirements, eroding the perception of efficiency and value.